Oops, what came to that? Oh my goodness. All right. Let Oh, everybody's in already. Oh, I'm sorry. Where's my record?
I think
Okay, there we go. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us for today's a month of service presentation of foreclosures. Property tax collections and foreclosures is what we're going to be discussing for you all today. My name is Nia Murray. I am the programs coordinator with Neighborhood Recovery Community Development Corporation, and we are one of the partners in the a month of service collaboration. Also included is the City of Houston's Department of Neighborhoods, and we have joining us today Ms. Rachel Gutierrez. Also, representing our presenting partner for today with Lone Star Legal Aid, we have Mr. Amir Abrafui, as well as Ms. April Harmon, who will be presenting the information for you today about property tax foreclosure and collections. But also included in the partnership, we have the Harris Central Appraisal District, Harris County Tax Assessor Collector's Office, the Earl Carl Institute, Houston Bar Association, Houston Volunteer Lawyers, and the Texas Legal Services Center, and collectively we make up a month of service. And basically what a month of service is a collaboration of all nine of our organizations. We come together on a monthly basis offering a variety of workshops, resources, and information to the community relative to community empowerment, asset building, asset protection, and community empowerment and the maintaining of generational wealth. We know that there are a lot of underserved communities that are out there that do not have access to a lot of information, specifically a lot of legal information that could potentially either save them money or help protect their assets, or help with building their assets. So we wanted to come together and try to create a larger impact and reach as many people as we possibly can. So the past several years we have been providing this information or kinds of information just like this to the community, so that we can get as much information out there as we possibly can. So um, the 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 fact that we have had to transition to a virtual platform has allowed us to do just that, is to reach more people, not only in the city of Houston, but Harris County, the surrounding counties, and throughout the entire state of Texas. So any of the legal presentations that we do provide for you all, know that that they are laws relative to the entire state of Texas and not just for the city of Houston or Harris County. So if you're joining us from those other areas, know that the information is relative to you as well. This is your opportunity to ask questions that you have of our legal service professionals that are here to provide this information for you today relative to this particular topic. Feel free to type your question into the chat or into the comment section if you are joining us live on any of the social media platforms. Do keep in mind that we are recording this session as well as broadcasting live on YouTube and on Facebook. So we ask that you try to keep your questions to be as general as you possibly can so that we can try to protect your privacy as much as we possibly can. So we don't want to divulge any, personal detailed information to get out there for everyone to actually have access to. However, we do want to encourage you to please reach out to our legal services partners if you feel the need, or if you find yourselves in need of any civil legal assistance. And Lone Star will go over the other services and things that are offered for them as well. And Ms. Rachel will kind of give some information for you guys about a pre-assessment or referral services that are available for through the Mother Service collaboration as well. So again, information that we do provide here today is for educational purposes only. It is not to be considered legal advice, but again, we do encourage you to reach out to our partners if you do find yourselves in need. So we do hope that you find the information to be beneficial, and ask that you pay it forward and pass it along to someone else that may be experiencing some kind of issue related to the topics that we have. You know, again, we want to try to get as much information out there to the community as we possibly can. So we want to thank you all for joining us this afternoon. You are in for a lot of great information. Feel free to take notes. Again, ask whatever questions that it is that you do have. Um, and we'll hopefully, again, that you find this information to be beneficial. So we're going to go right ahead and get started with our introductions, and we will move right on into the presentation. So Ms. Rachel, why don't we have you go first? Oops.
Thank you, Nia. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rachel Gutierrez. I am a for department. So on behalf of service, and we first want to say thank you to our partners for volunteering their time on a month-to-month basis to be able to provide this free information to you all. Education is the key to everything. So informing yourselves, empowering yourself with this information that we are able to provide to you. And we're so appreciative of all of our partners to that emphasize and know that there's so many people that we can reach and touch, and that it does affect. So we're appreciative of them, but we're also appreciative of you, our audience, for tuning in on a weekly basis, for educating yourselves, empowering yourselves, but also taking that information back into your communities and helping your neighbor. So we appreciate that and encourage you to keep engaging with us, encourage you to keep spreading the word. Where else can you get free educational information like this without being charged? I don't know where. So, and this is legit information. So it's actual credible. Tell your neighbor, tell the person at the grocery store, tell those at your church, or wherever you worship. So so that we can continue offering the service to you all. If you want to see different types of workshops, feel free to reach out to myself or to Nia, and we will work our hardest to get that information out there for you. So again, I appreciate you all, and please enjoy the presentation for today.
Okay, Amir, would you like to go ahead and introduce April?
Sure. So my name's Amir Bafrui, and before I get into anything about me, I'd like to introduce April Harmon, my colleague who's going to be co-presenting with us today. So April is a second-year law student at the University of Houston Law Center. She's currently working as a law clerk with Lone Star Legal Aid, helping us expand our mission on ensuring equal access to justice to low-income Texans and provide trusted, vetted legal information to all Texans about their legal rights. Now, more about me. I'm a licensed attorney. I've been practicing law for almost 12 years, primarily in the space of protecting homeowners. I currently manage Lone Star Legal Aid's foreclosure prevention project, but I don't want you to get focused on those words. If it has anything to do with someone's house, me and my team can generally help. So today we're here to talk about property taxes. Okay, so I just got a notification that my internet connection is unstable, so I'm going to try to talk a little more slowly so that if I freeze, we aren't going to miss anything. But today we're here to discuss property tax collection and foreclosure prevention. Now, as you heard Nia and Rachel mention, today's presentation is purely legal information as opposed to legal advice. what does legal advice mean? If you've never spoken with a legal professional or a lawyer, let me just break it down for you. Legal advice is taking the law and applying it to your specific fact or situation. We're not going to be able to do that on a one-on-one basis today, because today there is no confidentiality. This is being broadcast live on social media and on YouTube. And so ethically, lawyers cannot provide legal advice in a way that's not confidential. So we're not going to be able to provide that as well. So if you have specific information, questions, about your specific situation, we encourage you to follow up with Lone Star Legal Aid. We're going to discuss more details about Lone Star Legal Aid and how to apply and get more information a little bit later in this presentation. So here's the agenda for today. I'm going to spend about 7 to 8 minutes talking about Lone Star Legal, a brief update on the Texas Homeowners Assistance Fund, or you might hear me use the acronym Texas HAF. And then April is going to take it away. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. She's going to handle everything. I'll be available on the call to answer any questions that might, pop up as they go. If they're entered in the chat, I'll try to answer them as well. But we'll do Q&A at the end, both April and I. So let's talk about Lone Star Legal Aid. I think it's best to start at the very bottom and discuss what Lone Star Legal Aid is, how long we've been around, and what we do, so that if you or friends, family members, or anyone in your life ever needs an attorney and you don't think you can afford one, I want you to know about this valuable resource in our community. So what is Lone Star Legal Aid? We're a nonprofit law firm. We're designed and set up to protect and advance the civil legal rights of millions of Texans living in poverty. Now, folks might not think living in poverty, people have a perception of what that means. But we are designed to help. We are set up to provide free legal services to folks who qualify for our services. And generally, those are people who are working and unable to afford a lawyer. So if you're interested and if you need an attorney, I encourage you to apply. Our application process is pretty painless. You can do so online. We'll get into more details, or you can apply by phone. Again, those details will be covered later. And let us help you figure out if you are eligible for our services. Now, what's also mentioned on here is Lone Star Legal Aid serves 76 counties. So Texas has 254 counties. We serve 72 counties in Texas. That's mostly East Texas, the greater Houston area, parts of Central Texas near Waco and Belton. We also serve 4 counties in southwestern Arkansas, very close to Texarkana. Now, a few more quick facts. We serve 76 counties, as I just mentioned, but we're not just in Houston, where I'm based and where April's working. We have 14 offices throughout the greater East Texas and Central Texas area. I'm going to go through where those offices are located. But if you think about the greater Houston area and you're in this area, our headquarters is in downtown Houston. We have an office in Conroe. We're also in Richmond, out in Fort Bend County. We have an office in Clute near Lake Jackson. We have an office on Galveston Island. So if you're thinking of starting in downtown Houston and then drawing a line 60, 70 miles out and drawing a circle, we already got 5 offices to serve those communities. And that's just 5 out of the 14. In the 76 counties that we serve, there's 1.9 million people who are eligible for our services. So this is what I mean. And I want to emphasize what Rachel mentioned, which is make sure you share this trusted, vetted information. I'm a licensed attorney. I had to go to law school for 3+ years, take 2 tests, and continuously every year show that I'm still qualified to be an attorney. So this information is not going to be fly by night. It's not Google lawyer, but this is something where there's 1.9 million people in just East Texas that can definitely benefit from it, especially if you're a homeowner or maybe you've inherited property that has property taxes. Last year, we helped 60,000 individuals. So it's not 1.9 million. We do our best, but last year we were able to make a difference in the lives of 60,000 people. And that's why I encourage anybody who's interested in services to contact us, either at one of our offices online or by phone. So Lone Star Legal Aid has been around since the late 1940s. We haven't always been known by Lone Star Legal Aid. In the early 60s, the Houston Legal Foundation was created. This provided both civil and criminal legal defense for free. Eventually, this merged with another legal aid called East Texas Legal Services, which was created in the 80s. to provide free legal services in East Texas. In 2002, these two entities merged along with another legal aid called Legal Aid of Texas to make what is now known as Lone Star Legal Aid. So Lone Star Legal Aid, by that name, has been around since the early 2000s. Now, who do we help? We probably help someone just like you. This list on this on this page indicates that we help children, veterans, seniors, members of various communities. The majority of our clients are women, most of whom are mothers. We have about half of our clients come from the greater Houston area, the urban areas, and the other half come from the rural areas that Lone Star Legal Aid serves. As I mentioned before, we have 14 offices throughout East Texas and Central Texas. We're not just in Houston. We serve people who speak English, Spanish, Vietnamese, Chinese, or whatever language you or your family or friends who need help might speak. We have staff or access to translators who can help us make those connections. And our mission, as I mentioned before, but I want to reiterate, is to protect and advance the civil legal rights of millions of Texans living in poverty by providing free advocacy, free legal services, and access to justice. Now, this leads me to pause, or actually jump to the next slide and talk about our eligibility, but I'm going to explain what civil legal issues are shortly. The civil legal issues, Lone Star Legal Aid is set up to only handle civil legal issues. What that means is, what I like to say is, if you're facing jail time or a fine for breaking the law, we generally can't help you. I say generally because there's always exceptions. But if you remember nothing else, I like to say house, car, money, and family, so children or divorces. Lone Star Legal Aid is generally in those categories. Today, we're going to be talking about issues impacting homes. So that fits under that first category of house, car, money, kids, or house, car, money, family. If you remember nothing else, just remember those four things. And that is what a civil legal issue is. So I just mentioned kind of general categories of what areas Lone Star Legal Aid handles. But here we have a slide where we talk about more substantive legal issues, breaking them out into further specialized areas. Consumer law, I really want to pause here. Most folks that I've found when I mention that I'm a consumer lawyer or represent consumers don't have a really good idea of what that means. I want to just pause and say, every single person who's watching this, every single person who's ever bought something in their life in the United States is a consumer. You're a consumer of goods. So you bought food. You're a consumer of services. You hired a plumber. You're a consumer of housing services if you paid rent or bought a house. The United States economy, 2/3 of it is based upon consumers. So people like you and me spending money. So all of us are consumers. And as part of that, there are numerous consumer law issues. When you hear me use the word house, car, money, those three things generally fall under consumer law issues. So debt collection, bankruptcy, disputes with car companies over, a bad car, warranty issues, those kind of things. Those are consumer law issues. Now, why do I talk about that more than the other bullet points? Well, I've been doing consumer law for the last 12-ish years, but we handle a wide variety of legal issues. On this next slide, you'll see the special projects that Lone Star Legal Aid handles. And I want to highlight the second to the last bullet point, which is the foreclosure prevention project. Why? It's near and dear to my heart because I've been managing it since 2017. Prior to that, I was working within our foreclosure prevention project for several years. But in addition to the homeowner protection work that we do, we also handle a wide variety of other areas that are, again, listed here on this slide. Why do I emphasize these two slides where we talk about the different issues that we handle in the special projects? Is to let folks know that if you're watching this or if you're sharing this, there's more than likely someone at Lone Star Legal Aid who can help you solve your legal problem. So how do you ask for help? Well, I've mentioned this earlier, but I want to be very detailed right now. You can apply for our services 24 hours a day, 7 days a week by going to our website, lonestarlegal.org. Scroll down to the middle of the page. There's a big apply now button. If you prefer to do things over the phone, you can call our 1-800 number. Just call us during regular business hours, which is 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. Folks also can apply in person at any one of our 14 offices as well. So we try to make things as convenient and easy as possible for people looking to see if they qualify for free legal services to get connected with a lawyer. So let's talk about where Lone Star Legal Aid's offices are located. The picture on this slide is a picture of our downtown Houston office. located at the corner of Fannin and Bell Street. If you have an understanding of like downtown streets, you want to look for the corner of Fannin and Bell. But we have 14 offices. We're not just in Houston. We have an office in Beaumont. We're in Belton, Texas, which is just between Waco and Austin on Interstate 35. It's a little farther north of I-35. We're also in Bryan, so near the College Station area. Clute, as I mentioned, down near Lake Jackson. Conroe, which is north of Houston. Galveston on Galveston Island. Our Houston office, which is in downtown. We're also in Longview in East Texas. Oops. In Nacogdoches, Nacogdoches, Paris, Texas. Texarkana, right there on the Texas-Arkansas border. We're in Tyler, Texas. We're in Richmond, down in Fort Bend County. And we're also in Waco. If you want to learn more about what Lone Star Legal Aid does and all the services that I've discussed, you can check out our website, lonestarlegal.org. You can also actually subscribe to our website. It's like a blog where you can get updates regularly from our website. But in addition to what's on our website, we also have social media pages, which I will cover towards the end of the presentation. So there's the promised 7 to 8 minutes on Lone Star Legal Aid and what we do. Let's talk about the Texas Homeowners Assistance Fund, or Texas HAF. Now, the Texas Homeowners Assistance Fund was a program that was created back by the first COVID relief bill passed by the Congress in 2021. It was known as the American Rescue Plan Act. This provided about $800 million to the state of Texas. And that money was used and is still being used to help people get caught up on mortgage payments, property taxes, insurance, and HOA fees. It's the categories of assistance have since been expanded. The application process portal, rather, opened almost a little more than 2 years ago, March 2nd, 2022. Texas HAF closed its portal to new applications. So no new applications since October 9th of 2023. And any applications that were kind of on the waiting list or going through appeals were closed off as of April 2nd. So why am I talking about a program that's closed its applications and is no longer considering people on a waiting list? So I'll get to that in just a moment. Here's a screenshot of the Texas Homeowners Assistance Fund's website. They're making the final payments. As of this morning, the program started with about $740 million. It's right in the ballpark of $800 million that I mentioned. Some of that money went to administrative overhead. But the $740 million that was set aside for homeowners, there's about $46,000 left. So like 99% of the money is gone, but there's still $46,000 left. And what I've observed over the last several weeks is there's a trickle of homeowners who are having their applications approved. So if you're in the waiting list and you haven't gotten an email indicating that your application's been finally denied, don't hold out. I mean, don't lose hope. Make sure you communicate with the staff at the Texas Homeowners Assistance Fund. They still have $46,000 left and they may still be processing your application. So this is another screenshot from their website. You know, they're working through outstanding payments. You can contact their call center. And if you've gotten an email saying your application has not been approved, as I mentioned in the last bullet point here on this slide, they're no longer accepting appeals. And so it's going to be very, very difficult for you to change the decision if your application has been in fact denied. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and be quiet for a few minutes. But now you're going to hear from April Harmon, our law clerk here at Lone Star Legal Aid, and she's going to help you guys understand property taxes and property tax collection in Texas.
All right, thanks, Samir. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, great.
It's coming up. Yep, got it.
Okay, awesome. As Amir said, my name is April Harmon, and I'll be talking about property taxes and going through a lot of information that'll hopefully answer most of your questions. But as he said, we will take questions at the end. Okay. All right, so first off, we just want to start with some of the basics. Property taxes are local taxes. Local officials, they value your property, they set your tax rates, and they collect your taxes. The property tax provides more tax dollars for local government services in Texas than any other source. Property taxes help pay for public schools, city streets, county roads, police, fire protection, and many other services. I think someone's mics are open. I'm sorry.
I can't hear her.
The Texas law governs how the process works. In every county, property taxes are based on the tax rates set by the various local governments, that are also known as taxing units, that levy a tax based on the value of the property. And the valuation, or more commonly known as the appraisal process, is performed by the county's central appraisal district. The process serves to allocate the tax burden among property owners. So how does the system work? There's three main authorities for the property tax system in each Texas county. So first, there's the appraisal districts, the appraisal review boards, and the local taxing units. The appraisal district in each county sets the value of taxable property each year. So you've probably seen that you get, if you own a home, you get a statement each year about how they've evaluated your property or what they've assessed it for. And the chief appraiser is the appraisal district's chief administrator and responsible to the board of directors for its operations. An appraisal review board settles any disagreements between you and the appraisal district about the value of your property or whether you're entitled to any exemptions. And the local taxing units, including the county, city, school districts, and special utility districts, decide how much money they will spend each year. So this in turn determines the tax rate they need to set and the total amount of taxes that you and your neighbors will pay. So the path of the property tax dollars, you can see here, you pay your property taxes to the local tax collector. And the tax collector then distributes those funds to the schools, the cities, and any other local government or taxing entities. The local government spends the funds on schools, roads, hospitals, fire departments, and any other public programs. The four stages of the valuation of the taxation process are valuing the taxable property, and that's the appraisal process where the appraiser comes out, looks at your property, does an assessment and determines that value for that year. And then the protesting the property values, that which we'll go over in more detail later, but what that is if you happen to disagree with that assessment, then you do have the opportunity to protest that, and adopting the tax rates, and then collecting the taxes. The annual property tax line is January 1st. So that marks the beginning of the property appraisal period, and what a property is used for on January 1st, the market conditions at that time, who owns the property on that date, determine whether the property is taxed, its value, any just for exemptions, and who's responsible for paying the tax. Between January 1st and April 30th, the appraisal district processes applications for exemptions, agricultural and timber appraisals, and any other tax reliefs. Around May 15th, the appraisal review board begins hearing the protests from property owners who believe their property values are incorrect or who feel they were improperly denied an exemption or agricultural or timber appraisal. The ARB is an independent panel of citizens who are responsible for handling protests about the appraisal district's work. So when the ARB finishes its work, the chief appraiser gives each taxing unit a list of taxable property known as the appraisal roll. And usually in September or October, the elected officials of each taxing unit adopt the tax rates for their operations and debt payments. So typically, each property is taxed by several taxing units. So if you've ever looked at your tax statement, you'll see the different entities that you're paying your taxes to, like the school districts, Harris County Appraisal District, for example, any of the hospital districts, etc. So every property in Harris County is taxed by both the county and a school district. The taxes may also be payable to a city or any special district, including such entities as a municipal utility district, any rural or fire protection districts, junior college districts, etc. So tax collections start in October and November as the tax bills go out. The taxpayers have until January 31st of the following year to pay their taxes. On February 1st, the penalty and interest charges begin accumulating on most unpaid tax bills, and the taxing units may start legal action to collect unpaid property taxes once they become delinquent. So you can see here just a diagram of everything that I've just covered, which kind of tells you how that, as we started here, like I mentioned, January 1st is when um, that's when the appraisal year starts, and then you see kind of going from there. Um, taxes due. I'm not going to go over all this as I just did, but you can just kind of, it gives you an idea of what that process looks like if you're more of a visual person. Okay, so you may be wondering, how can you lower your property taxes? That's a question that most people want to know if they're paying taxes. So if the appraisal district appraises your property at a higher amount than in the previous year, then the appraisal district is required to send you a notice of appraised value by May the 1st or by April the 1st if your property is a residence homestead or as soon as a practical thereafter. The notice of appraised value information includes information on how to file a protest, as well as an explanation of the availability of an informal conference with the appraisal district prior to your formal hearing with the appraisal review board. If you're dissatisfied with your appraisal value, or if errors exist in the appraisal records regarding your property, you should file a notice of protest. In most cases, you may have until May 15th or 30 days from the date of the appraisal district notice, whichever date is later. And property owners may appoint someone to represent them in their protest hearing. They will need to sign either an appointment of tax agent form or an authorization on the notice of protest form. After filing your protest, you'll be given a written notice of the date, time, place, and subject matter for a formal hearing from the IR with the appraisal review board. You may request an informal conference with the appraisal district to try to resolve your protest before the hearing. If you're not able to resolve your protest informally, you can continue your protest to the appraisal review board. At the formal hearing, the ARB listens to both the taxpayer and the chief appraiser, and you can discuss your objections about your property value, exemptions, and special appraisal in a hearing with the appraisal review board. Their decisions are binding only for the tax year in question. So you're able to do it each year if you have an issue that you want to protest. So what should you expect at a hearing? You want to gather all the information about your property that you feel is relevant in considering the true value of your home, such as any photos of your property, any comparables, so not just photos of your property, but like your neighbors' properties that you are comparing to your home, receipts or estimates of repairs, sales price documentation, such as listings in the area that have recently closed, any closing statements, and other information that you may have. Part of your hearing involves showing evidence. Another part involves arguing your case or explaining your evidence clearly and concisely. You may feel that your taxes are too high, but neither the appraisal review board nor the appraisal district sets your taxes. The ARB can consider the effect of the general economic and environmental factors, but not your personal economic situation. So 15 minutes are usually allotted for both the appraisal district and the homeowner to present their case, and it's suggested that to allow 2 hours between signing in and the actual start of the meeting or hearing. So what if you disagree with the results of your protest hearing? Your first option is you can either file a lawsuit in the state district court in the county where the property is located. Option 2, you can appeal and ask for a binding arbitration. So that's where you may want to consider contacting a lawyer if you get to this stage, which is something that Lone Star Legal Aid or other services, if you're eligible, can assist you with. So what happens if you miss the protest deadline? You might be able to protest late, but this is where you want to be able to show that you have a good reason for missing the protest deadline. This information here is from the Texas Property Tax Code, Section 41, and it provides that a property owner who files your notice of protest after the deadline, which is, as I said earlier, May 15th or 30 days after receiving your notice, whichever is later, but before the appraisal review board approves the appraisal records, is entitled to a hearing and determination of the protest if you show good cause as determined by the board for failure to file the notice on time. And that's at their discretion. So this here gives more insight into what the board considers a good cause for filing. Is not defined by the tax code section, but claims of good cause for late file protests must be carefully considered. The standards in making the determinations of good cause under the tax code section 41 must be uniformly applied. The ARB should give due consideration to good cause claims in a manner that properly respects the rights of the property owners and their agents while not undermining or contravening laws related to the filing deadlines or the orderly and expeditious fulfillment of their duties. So what this is saying, it's mandating that the appraisal review board does have to hear if you do have a good cause and at least consider it and have a standard in place that they use for everyone and it's not arbitrary. So do you have a good reason for missing the protest deadline? Under the tax code, there is one special type of good cause, and that is if the appraisal district did not provide or deliver a value notice. That's the statement that you get once they've appraised your property. So if the notice was incorrectly addressed, that might constitute proof. One example is if the notice was addressed to the prior owner. However, just saying that you didn't receive the notice is likely not enough. So if you're arguing a different type of good cause, you'll have to provide proof of that in the hearing. Did you pay the portion of the taxes not under protest on time? Under the tax code, you're generally required to pay the portion of your taxes not under protest before the delinquency date. In other words, you generally must pay the amount of taxes you would have owed if your home was appraised for the lower value that you think is correct, and you'll have to do the math on that. So just as an example, if the house appraised for what you normally paid last year and you think it should be at that same or similar amount, then you would have to at least pay that amount. You also have to provide proof that you paid the taxes during the hearing. So a final note about late file protests, you'll first have a hearing to prove that you have a good cause to protest late and that you paid your taxes on time. And you may only get to argue your value protest if the ARB agrees that you have a good cause to protest late. So this may be in a separate hearing. So now we're going to talk about homestead exemptions. What are they and how do they affect your taxes? So the amount you pay in taxes depends on the value of your home. The higher your home's value, the more you pay in taxes. Homestead exemptions essentially deduct a portion of your home's value so that that portion is not taxed. So the effect is that your taxes are going to be lowered. So you can apply for homestead exemptions for the property you use as your primary residence if you have an ownership interest in it. The exemptions are not automatic. You must apply. And we'll discuss today the exemptions that we're going to talk about today are the resident home homestead exemptions and the elder and disabled exemptions. There's other exemptions, such as those for disabled veterans, surviving spouses, agriculture, etc. But we're going to focus on the homestead and elder disabled exemptions for today. The residence home exemption for school district taxes for 2024 rose from 40,000 to 100,000. I'm assuming that's for Harris County. So this change is effective for 3 tax years. Some taxing units may offer more generous exemptions when allowed by law. And Amir, you can tell me, I just want to clarify if that's for all of Texas or is that for certain school districts for this exemption here? The resident homestead.
Hey, y'all hear me now?
Yes.
All right. So the $100,000 exemption is actually applicable to all school districts statewide.
Okay.
That was part of a constitutional amendment that passed in November of last year. So yeah, the homestead exemption is something that's not unique to any specific county. It can be a little more generous than that, county by county, but the baseline floor is 100,000 statewide.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for clarifying that. So you must have ownership interest in your home, and a recorded contract for deed will serve as proof of ownership. And some heirs can qualify without a traditional deed through tax laws, and you can only have one homestead exemption on record at a time. The homeowner must be an individual, not a corporation or a business, and the homeowner must use the home as your principal residence as of January 1st of that specific tax year. An age of 65 or older or disabled exemption is effective as of January 1st of the tax year. The applicant qualifies and applies to the entire tax year. A residence homestead can be a separate structure, a condo, or a manufactured home located on owned or leased land as long as the individual living in the home owns it. A residence homestead can include up to 20 acres if the land is owned by the homeowner and used for a purpose related to the residential use of the homestead. So this is an example, this is a screenshot of the form that you want to use, which you can get from the Texas Controller website. You can usually find it also on your county appraisal district websites, but it's Form 50-114. It's the resident homestead exemption application. You do have to, as I said earlier, apply and actually submit it and for it to be considered. So if you live in a home that has multiple owners, can you still qualify for a resident homestead exemption? If you're not the only owner to which the homestead applies, one of these ownership situations may apply. If a married couple qualifies, their property for residence homestead exemption, the spouses are treated as community property owners with 100% ownership for each spouse. So if you inherited property, you may be eligible as an heir property owner to be considered the sole owner for the residence homestead exemption, but you'll need certain documents such as a death certificate of the record owner or any specific affidavits. If you have partial ownership but are not married or didn't inherit the property, the exemption amount is based on the interest you own, called an apportioned interest, and you'll get a percentage of the exemption but not the full exemption. So for example, if you only own a third, if your interest is only a third, it'll be based on that third percent ownership versus 100% ownership. What is the deadline? The completed application and required documents are due no later than April the 30th of the tax year for which you're applying. However, a late residence homestead exemption application, including the 65 or older or disabled, may be filed up to 2 years after the delinquency date, which is usually February 1st. So your taxes can be recalculated retroactively. So what that means is if you've already paid it and then it gets approved and you apply 2 years later, they would apply it to what you've already paid if it's approved. So can you get both an over the 65 exemption and a disability exemption? The short answer is you can't have both at one time. But if a homeowner qualifies for both and the owner has to choose one or the other. So it can be beneficial to convert to the over 65 exemption once you qualify. It usually is cheaper, but you do want to, look at the numbers to verify that. The individuals with an over 65 exemption or disability exemption can qualify for an extra 10,000 residence homestead exemption for school taxes, in addition to the 100,000 school tax exemption that I mentioned earlier that was recently passed for all homeowners. So some taxing units may offer more generous exemptions when allowed by law. So what if your application for an exemption was denied? You can protest. If your exemption or a deferral is not initially granted, you should get a letter giving you a 30 days to submit any missing information before the denial is finalized. If your exemption or deferral is officially denied, you have the right to protest the denial to the appraisal review board. You don't get an informal hearing first, however. You don't have to pay your taxes fully paid to appeal the denial of an exemption or deferral. You do have the right to appeal to the district court or enter binding arbitration if you disagree with the appraisal review board's decision. And some common reasons for denial are not providing an unexpired photo ID with the current property address, not providing adequate proof of home ownership or eligibility of heirship, not providing proof of disability or disability exemption or tax deferral. So what if you can't afford to pay your taxes? Then you may qualify for a payment plan. And if you're 65 or old, if you're over 65 or disabled, you are allowed to request a payment plan in 4 equal installments without incurring penalties or interest. So you must be, again, disabled or 65 or older, disabled veterans or their unmarried surviving spouses who qualify for an exemption, or partially disabled veterans with homes donated by charitable organizations and their unmarried surviving spouses are eligible. So these taxpayers may make the first installment payment and request the agreement before the delinquency date of February the 1st. Installment payments apply to all taxing units on the bill. So it'll be distributed accordingly. If paying on an installment plan, the first installment must be paid before February 1st, before the February 1st delinquency date, and accompanied by a notice to the taxing unit that the person intends to pay the remaining taxes in 3 equal installments. The second installment is due before April the 1st. The third is due before June the 1st, and the fourth and final installment is due before August the 1st. Some taxing units may let you split your payments into 2 equal installments. You must first pay your first payment before December the 1st, and you can then pay your second payment before July 1st without any penalty or interest. But you want to contact your tax office to see if they offer this option. If your homestead is in a disaster area and it was impacted by a disaster, you may qualify to pay taxes in 4 equal installments as well. And again, you want to contact your tax office if you did suffer from one of the natural disasters to see if you qualify. You may also be able to set up an informal payment plan with the tax office or the taxing unit's attorneys. There are penalties and interest that may apply to any taxes that are paid after January the 31st. So note, some homeowners have more than one tax office. For example, Harris County collects through the Harris County tax office, but some independent school districts have their own tax offices. So you want to make sure that you contact each tax office that collects taxes for your home. Sometimes it's just one, but sometimes it's more than one. So you do want to make sure. It's important for you to notify your mortgage company if you have set up any type of payment plan, and they must honor your right to have a payment plan under Texas law if you do qualify. However, it is your responsibility to notify them that you are paying your taxes under a payment plan. Otherwise, they're going to pay your taxes for you, or they may pay them for you and then consider it a default on your mortgage. So it's important to make sure you're communicating any plans that you've made with your tax offices so that they can adjust your records accordingly. Tax deferrals allow you to defer or put off the deadline to pay your taxes, and it can prevent foreclosures. You're still taxed each year, and your unpaid taxes accrue interest, but the tax deferrals only apply to a person's residence homestead. You must be 65 or older and have a documented disability to qualify. And to apply for the tax deferral, you must provide an affidavit to the county appraisal district. The affidavit is Texas Controller Form 50-126, which you can find online, or you can just actually Google Texas Controller Form 5126 and it'll pop up. A tax deferral does not get rid of the taxes. So if you sell your home, the taxes must be paid at closing. If you live in the home until you pass away, your heirs will have to pay the taxes. And as we'll discuss more later, a tax deferral can stop a tax foreclosure sale or a tax collection lawsuit. You're generally not allowed to defer your taxes if you have a mortgage because you've agreed in the mortgage documents to pay the taxes on time. So that's again the significance of notifying them if you made any type of payment arrangements. So the question here is, can you be foreclosed on for not paying your property taxes? And the answer is yes, you can. Generally in Texas, Texas is a non-judicial foreclosure state, and many mortgages can be foreclosed without a lawsuit, which is basically what that means. However, foreclosing on a home for delinquent property taxes in Texas requires judicial foreclosure, which does require a lawsuit. So if the taxing units prove in the lawsuit that taxes are owed, they will get a court order that allows them to foreclose on your home. They must send a notice of foreclosure sale letter at least 21 days before the scheduled sale. Unfortunately, they don't have to prove you actually received the letter. And the foreclosure sales are generally the first Tuesday of every month. If the first Tuesday falls on a holiday, then it'll move to that Wednesday. If you qualify for a tax deferral, you can provide a tax deferral affidavit to the taxing unit's attorneys, the constable, and the appraisal district at least 5 days before the foreclosure sale in order to have the sale abated or put on hold. In practice, that means they cancel that particular sale date. You then have to get the deferral officially in place with the appraisal district, or the sale will be rescheduled for the next month or so. Property tax lawsuits. So delinquent tax accounts can be turned over to collections effective July the 1st of each year. Referrals to collections will add attorney's fees. So in addition to the taxes and the interest that you may be accruing, you will also have attorney fees added to that. To foreclose, the taxing units have to file a lawsuit against the property owners. In the lawsuit, they have to prove that the taxes are not paid. The lawsuit will add more attorney's fees and more court costs. So if the record property owner has passed away, a neutral third party attorney, which the court calls an ad litem, will be appointed in the lawsuit to search for the owner's heirs, and that will also add more attorney's fees. So if you're sued for delinquent property taxes, be sure to file an answer in the lawsuit, which basically means don't ignore it. Follow up to give some response, whether you agree or disagree. This will make sure that you get all the court notices and prevent the taxing units from getting a default judgment against you. And default judgment just means that if it's like if you don't respond and they've waited the appropriate amount of time, then um, basically they they win that particular claim. So you can talk to a lawyer. You can also find a sample answer form at this particular website, which is found at Texas Law Help. You can go there and just search in their search bar whatever assistance or matter. Like for this, you would say property tax lawsuit, and you can find this form as well, but it actually has it here. If the property owner or an heir living in the property as their homestead qualifies for a tax deferral, you can file an affidavit in the lawsuit to put it on hold. But sometimes the taxing units will even drop the lawsuit completely once you file it. The property owner or the heir also must apply for their homestead exemption, whether it's residence or any of the other exemptions, and the tax deferral with the appraisal district. So filing the affidavit in the lawsuit does not grant the deferral. If taxes for the past 2 years are delinquent and there's no homestead exemption on the property, applying for the exemptions will lower the taxes retroactively and you may owe less. You can also try negotiating with the tax attorneys for a payment plan. It's important now to be aware of all types of property related scams, but today we're going to talk about property tax scams and how to avoid them. It you may have got when you buy a house, sometimes third party companies will send you stuff in the mail saying they'll file these homestead exemption forms for you and they'll charge you a few $100, but you don't have to pay them. You can do it. It's free. You can get the form yourself. If you don't have access online, you may be able to go and get the form in person at the appraisal district office, but it is available online. You can download it for free and submit it for free. There's no application fee. You may get solicitation letters in the mail for paid services, as I said, that will charge you a fee. But again, you can do it yourself. And any state forms are free to download on the state controller's website. You can also, like I said, contact your appraisal district for any of the forms. And if you happen to not have access to a computer, you can go in person, and they usually have the forms available for you to fill out. So this is just a picture here of what some of these letters will look like from these companies that charge you to file these forms. You can just see here, it tells you, like it says, tax processing unit. You know, the main alert is they're asking you for money to file it. And it doesn't have the address of the actual appraisal district where you live. It comes from some other address. That's what that's kind of pointing to here. So those are the kinds of things that you want to look out for these types of scams. But again, and if you're in doubt and you get something, any type of mail that is saying that it's from the tax office, you can also always call them to ask them if they sent you something, or just to follow up and see if there's any type of notices or anything out there before you call the number on the letter, just call the tax office directly. But some of them will imply that your payments are delinquent, and they may not be delinquent, or that you're in trouble for not paying, and you may have already paid it, or you may have been late and already paid it, but they have they get this information from public records, and so that's how they get your information, and that's how they target um, vulnerable populations, and they look very real. So again, we advise you to always contact the tax office, or anyone, whether it's tax office, social security office, or anyone who sends you or calls you, and you didn't call them first, just to verify any information that you receive. Also, avoiding foreclosure scams, which I saw recently in the news. There's been an uptick in just what we call title deed foreclosure, and just all different types of um, people that are scammers that are out here preying on people's property rights, and scaring people, because they've gotten information from public records. So just what I just said, it is public record. So whenever, if you get behind on your payments, whether it's taxes or whatever, and there's a foreclosure lawsuit filed, it becomes public record, and it's recorded in the county records, in the county clerk's records. And scammers can contact you claiming to be able to stop the foreclosure, or offering to give you a couple $1,000s to sell your house or sign over the title to them. There's all different types of ways that they will try to scam you, but they um, typically don't have your best interest in mind. But sometimes they want you to give them money. Sometimes they maybe even offer you money for the title to your property, but usually it's not what your property is actually worth. They just know that you're behind, so they feel like you may be desperate for the money, and they usually don't tell you that they're taking your house from you. They just make it seem like they're trying to help you. But uh, people who are set for foreclosure are often targets for these types of scammers. And so don't let yourself be pressured, because you can make arrangements, as I've discussed, payment plans. You can reach out for legal assistance. You can call to make arrangements and ask for deferral. So you have a lot of different options. So, and a lot of times what we find is clients are getting letters, or they're getting calls, and they know they're behind, but they're just, they don't have the money. So they feel like, well, it's nothing I can do because I don't have the money. And then it becomes too late. So as soon as you start getting behind, call, try to make some type of arrangements, um, so that you don't get in a situation where you're under pressure and then become subject to these types of scams. There's a lot of articles out there, but the Federal Trade Commission has an article about foreclosure scams. You can go and Google news articles and things like that. The Texas Law Help has an article about foreclosure scams. So just be aware. And like I said, if you have questions, if you need assistance, Lone Star Legal Aid is here to help if you qualify. And if you don't qualify, we also have, referrals to other resources, pro bono resources that you may be eligible for. Here's our contact information and our website. And I think this is where we will open it up for questions.
Great job, April. I think I was the most active in the chat, just trying to
So I was
supplement
gonna
everything
say,
you were
I'm
saying.
looking through the
Oh,
chat. Mia, do you
oh,
have anything online? Because I know you yes, Pamela?
Yes, hi. My question is, I saw that on the homestead exemption, you must be a resident as of January 1st, right? My question is, so let's say I am a resident, but I was not per se an owner, or I did not share part ownership. Does that still qualify? Because it says to be a resident, which I was a resident. This was my primary residence, but I did not become an official owner until 4 days later, let's say.
So
would that still qualify?
The
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, the Texas legislature addressed this, I want to say, in the 2021 session with a change that became effective January 1, 2022. Because most folks were buying their property, and if you didn't own it as of January 1, you'd miss out on the exemption for a whole year. And the change has been made to where you get the homestead exemption prorated for the number of days that you own the property that year. So in the situation you described, maybe you don't get 365 days of the homestead exemption, but you get 361, which is a lot better than 0.
I'm sorry,
go ahead.
My apologies. Can you repeat as of when this, and what session, what year?
I don't know the bill off the top of my head, but I was following it closely 3-4 years ago. I want to say in the 2021 session, the Texas legislature passed a bill to then affect property tax homestead exemptions for 2022, 2023, and so on. Say that you're entitled to the exemption as of the day that you became the owner, and you're entitled to a prorated amount. So in your situation, you mentioned potentially becoming the owner on January 4th or 5th. Well, you would be entitled to the homestead exemption. You wouldn't get 365 days of it, but you'd get 361 or 360. And, this is near and dear to my heart personally. I bought my first house in April in 2017 and had to pay 100% of the taxes with no homestead for 8 months. Whereas the next year for 2018, I was able to get the tax exemption, and it was a huge, I think it was a $2,000 difference. So I know the legislature made this change. I couldn't cite you to, I'm very confident that it happened in 2022, but I would search for it, Texas legislature, property tax reform, homestead exemption. I would search for that and then just do a little bit of research to make sure, to verify what I'm saying.
Thank you for that.
Great question.
There's a question in the chat that says, can you make payment plans on non-primary property?
So I'm going to make an assumption when the Miss Charlotte Johnson chatted, can you make payment plans on non-primary property? I'm assuming you meant non-homestead property. So this would be just like vacant land or a second home or rental property or commercial property. And you don't have a statutory, a legal right to demand a payment plan like you do with the homestead. With your home. As April mentioned, if it's your home, you have the right to demand a 1 to 3 year payment plan for your property taxes. For everything else, it's really discretionary, meaning the tax office can say yes and they can say no, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. And candidly, even though tax offices aren't required to do it, they're in the business of collecting taxes and having taxes paid regularly. Most would welcome, I would assume, and I do emphasize assume, you setting up a payment plan, because that is revenue for the city, the county, the school districts, what have you, that they otherwise might not have to get. And then they have to hire a lawyer and go through the entire process to collect that, which can take years. This is the process that April was describing when she was going through tax collection and tax foreclosure.
Okay, Foreman?
Yes, I wanted to go back to the presentation part regarding the inheritance, being heir property, and the whole process of responding to the courts regarding being sued for back taxes. And I'm kind of curious with this situation to the procedure being carried out as far as the property being there. And I guess there was a chemical plant that had already posted a sign on the property. There's just the land. There's no How's there anything there? But they had already posted a sign up there saying that they were actually the owners of the property. And I'm just curious to what, and now the sign has been removed. But I'm just curious to, in this whole proceedings, how another party could take possession of the property
Great
or
question.
claim. There was and this is a large chemical company, and so yeah, that's just strange. Just curious to know. It seems like
So
some steps are missing.
that's a great question. So if I heard you correctly, and I'm going to rephrase it, and I'd just like you to confirm so I answer the correct question. The question is, how can anyone, whether it's an individual or a large company, like in your example, claim property just by putting a sign up? Is that a fair way to put it?
Yes.
Okay. So I can't speak for other states, but I can tell you in Texas, that might be legal. It might not be. And what I can tell you is I could walk down the street, put a sign up in somebody else's yard, say, this is mine. And if no one does anything about it for a certain period of time and I check certain boxes, I can make it mine. That's what's called adverse possession. A lot of people hear about this maybe on the 6 o'clock news once a year, called squatters' rights, or someone moved into an abandoned house in the suburbs and all of a sudden they won't leave and now it's theirs. If you think about it, moving onto property, putting a sign up, saying it's yours, acting like it's yours, what you just described with this chemical company. That does not mean what they're doing is legal. It does not mean what they're doing is illegal. What happens when there's a gray area and someone's rights are potentially being trampled upon, for lack of a better way of putting it, you should take that other side to court for a judge to listen to both sides, hear all the facts, look at all the paperwork, look at the deeds, what have you, to figure out who owns what. So this pops up a lot in heirs property situations. And when I say heirs property, it's the very common fact pattern is someone passed away, maybe mom or dad bought property in the 50s and they have a deed in their name. They have a piece of paper that says they own it. And then father passed away first. He didn't have a will. Then mom passes away. They had 4 kids and mom didn't have a will. Well, now there's no paper trail that says who gets what. So then this property is referred to as heirs property. There are heirs, but there's no piece of paper that says who gets it. And what can happen in heirs property situations or situations like you just described is someone moves onto the land and says it's mine. And if they sit there long enough, generally somewhere between 3 and 20 years, and I'm sorry to give you the spread so wide, but there are different fact patterns. You can then make the property legally yours under a legal concept known as adverse possession. You have to move onto the property. You have to claim it's yours. You have to kick everybody else off. You can kick people off by putting up a fence or putting up a sign and then just acting like it's yours. Pay the property taxes, act like it's yours. And so I can't speak to what this chemical company is doing, but the world is made up of people. People run businesses and people make mistakes. And how do you solve problems when there's mistakes? Generally, in the United States and in Texas, you know, we're a country of laws, so you follow the law, and if you have a dispute, you go to court to figure it out. I know I make that seem a lot simpler than it actually is, but that is just the high level process, and I hope that was responsive to your question. If you have any follow-ups, by all means, ask me.
Yes, that was great. Thank you so much. Like I said, I was just curious to what was going on because all this happened. The information, excuse me, I'm sorry. Let me gather my thoughts here. So this all happened. Then I was served. Have responded to the courts on this, but the same day that the answer was filed, somewhere in between that, the sign had been taken down. as if it had never been there. So I was just thinking that a step or something had been missed. All of this is new to me. And so I'm just trying to see what I need to do next, which may be getting some legal advice to what needs to go on because I had no idea that this was going to come about. And so these entities are wanting those back taxes, as far as being able to make a payment plan or be offered some type of payment plan on it. There's actually nothing that can be done with the property other than maybe putting a fence up. You can't build anything down there where it is. So it's just kind of there, you know.
If I could analogize your situation, this happens a lot in older suburbs where fences get rebuilt. And when you bought your house, maybe you had a survey done. That's very common now. It wasn't so common in the 90s or 80s or 70s, prior to the 2000s. And the survey is literally where someone comes out to your house and measures and compares it against the deed that you got to figure out how much dirt legally belongs to you. And I do want to emphasize dirt. They will put a stick down. They will measure 150 feet north, 60 feet west to figure out how much of this rectangle, this dirt shaped like a rectangle belongs to you. And when folks get fences rebuilt, sometimes the fence shifts by 6 inches or so. And so you often hear about disputes between neighbors that are caused by those situations. And here, maybe the chemical company put the sign up because they believed they owned the property. Maybe they were trying to get some extra property. Maybe an honest mistake was made and they just didn't do their homework by checking the deed records. They just saw some land that was next to theirs and they put up their sign to keep people away.
Okay. Thank you so much.
It's a very unfortunate situation. I do recommend, and I think Amir would recommend for you to do, Ms. Foreman, is to go ahead and obtain some legal representation to help you sort out this situation.
Looks, Pamela Miguel, you have a question? Her hand's up.
Yes, sorry. I do have an additional question. Regarding gentrification, what can be done, or do you guys have any advice in gentrified areas, communities, neighborhoods, where there's these developers that come and they buy houses, they demolish them, and they build 2, 3, 4 really tall, slender houses. So now the property value went up because they're selling each house at $400,000 on a small lot, and then your house by default goes up in taxing as well. Is there a
In a nutshell, that's kind of the purpose of doing these kinds of presentations, to make sure as many people get that information that they need so that they'll know how to clear title for that inherited property that they've had, or how to figure out how to get clear title to different to heirs property, to stop that kind of thing from happening. In addition to that, we need to let people know that they actually need to attend like the planning meetings so that they'll know what developments and things like that are have been approved to come up in their neighborhoods so that they can actually protest. So if the community doesn't say, oh no, I don't want this here, then they pretty much can kind of build wherever it is that they want. So, but the downside is that, having to collect all of those heirs to actually put forth the effort to put in that work that is going to need to be done to make sure that they maintain possession of the property so that it doesn't get sold, so that they do pay the taxes, that it doesn't get foreclosed on and then go to an auction and then being bought by a developer, or that some heir doesn't force the sale of a property because nobody else is paying attention to what what's being done, and can basically force the sale, because the heirs don't want to pay for it, or they just don't want to be bothered with it, don't want to worry about it or whatever, you know, unfortunately, it gets really expensive to have to, if you don't qualify, to pay for an attorney to have to sort out these kinds of things to keep this kind of stuff from happening. So it's basically just passing the information along and spreading the knowledge to as many people as you possibly can, and to talk to your family members about the importance of having a will, creating an estate plan, you know, something as simple as a transfer on death deed to make sure that your property goes to who it is that you want it to go to without it actually being lost or having to pay for an attorney to get it done for you.
Thank you.
I wanted to supplement some of the things Nia mentioned, and just FYI, if you guys see me look to my left or look a little sweaty, it's because I have HVAC contractors in my house. The AC is off and it is warm, and I just don't want y'all to hear the background noise. A homeowner in a gentrifying area has a couple of things, and I think I want to take a step back, kind of level set what gentrification is, because I think we all have a lot of folks have a belief about what gentrification is. Gentrification is. What we really don't like is displacement, right?
Yeah.
Gentrification is investment in an area that didn't previously have investment. And generally that investment is the roads got improved, or the area next to it is now more attractive. And so now developers want to come and put some more money in that. And now what that's leading to is the current residents, the longtime residents, being pushed out. And they might be pushed out because of predatory development, you know, developers just knocking on their door and harassing them until they choose to sell, or it might be because the taxes are going up, kind of in line with what I think your question was, Pamela. So to protect yourself, if you live in a gentrifying area from displacement, and that's, I level set that to make sure you understand where I'm coming from, and I want to make sure it lines up with your question. Homestead exemption, that's the number one tool. If you have the homestead exemption on your property, the county appraisal district, I'm going to use Harris County, the Harris Central Appraisal District cannot raise your property value more than 10% a year. So that gives you some predictability. If your house is already appraised at $300,000, next year, if you have a homestead exemption, HCAD will not be able to raise it more than $330,000. Now, I did not get a 10% raise this past year. So if my taxes go up more than my raise, I'm going to be upset. Now, you shouldn't just use that. I'm using that as an example. I'm going to come back to it. Protest your taxes. That's the second tool, right? Just because there's townhomes, like you mentioned, tall, skinny houses. I think we're talking about townhomes that were built down the street. But you might have a one-story ranch style house that was built in the 1950s. That's what I live in. You know, it looks nice now, but it wasn't always this nice. They ain't the same. And so they should not be valued the same. This is an example of what April was mentioning in protesting. So these are two tools that homeowners have there on their own without having to do anything beyond that. And you don't have to cast about for protesting and think, I don't know what I don't know. There's lots of private companies that will help you protest your property taxes. Now, I'm not here to recommend any single one, but you know, you might get mailers, you know, around February, March, April, saying, you know, let us help you protest your property taxes. The way most of these companies work is they'll protest your tax value. And if they lower the value, your taxes are going to go down by some number. Say they lower a $30,000, your tax bill goes down $1,500. They're going to charge you a percentage of what they save you. So you don't pay them anything unless they save you something. And most property tax consultants, like I just went through their business model, will charge you somewhere between 25 and 50% of the savings. So it's a no-lose situation to protest your taxes every year, because if you protest and it's not successful, your taxes aren't going to be any higher. But if you do win, your taxes are going to be lower. So it's like heads I win, tails I win, or tails you lose. Other things would be to do exactly what Nia said, and I'll just touch on it. But like, if there is development in a city, so if you're in like the city of Houston, cities, or city of League City or city of Katy, cities have like ordinances and planning commissions and meetings and those kind of requirements. If you live in a part of the county, Harris County, that's not incorporated, there's generally not going to be those kind of meetings. So when you're in a city, these commissions will require a developer or somebody who wants to redo the property, put up a sign to say, this is when the meeting's going to be, please attend. And a lot of them are done via Zoom now to make it accessible. It used to be you had to come downtown or to some office building. So it's a lot more accessible. Get involved. The last thing is, if you live in an older neighborhood, like an older suburb of Houston, like I live in Spring Branch. This is, on the west side of town, no homeowners association, but we do have deed restrictions. You might have a civic association, a group of neighbors that are just volunteering. Make sure y'all are paying attention to your deed restrictions and seeing if those developers are following them. The city of Houston has the authority to enforce deed restrictions, but I mean, there's 2.5 million people in the city of Houston that can't do it all. And so individual homeowners or their civic associations can enforce deed restrictions. But generally, like the deed restrictions for my neighborhood say, I think there's the house has to be a certain size. I can't be closer than 15 feet to the back fence, and I can't be farther than 25 feet away from the street. Well, that really would discourage a townhome developer in your situation. So homestead exemptions, protesting your taxes, pay attention to all the things Nia and Rachel mentioned, and Rachel provided the link in the chat. And then also talk to your neighbors to see if y'all's HOA, if you have a homeowners association, or if your civic association has deed restrictions that y'all can enforce.
And get a will, or create an estate plan. It's simple. Create an estate plan. Something, and tell somebody where it is. Just have the conversation. And it's unfortunate. It's a lot of the poorer communities and a lot of communities of color that don't like to talk about having wills or estate plans. They think it's a jinx or like a faux pas to even talk about death, even though it's inevitable. It's gonna happen to everybody. It's not gonna go away. But not even just death, but even incapacity or whatever, or being able to make decisions about what happens to your property. It could happen at any time. COVID should have been a prime example for everybody of anything being able to happen at any time. Oh, okay. Amir's just putting the other notes, what he just said in the chat. But yeah, so those are some the more immediate kind of things that you could do to help with gentrification if it's happening in your community. There was a question that got emailed to me that says, what are the steps to get a copy of the deed I'm sorry, Miss Pam, was that all that you had? I didn't want to cut you off if there was something
Yes,
else.
no, that was wonderful. Thank you so much. It was extremely informative. Thank you.
Okay. So what are the steps to get a deed as soon as the house has been paid for? Do you need to get a lawyer to do that?
I smile because one of my friends who's a lawyer asked me this exact same question like 6 months ago. So I'll take you through her family's example, and hopefully this will answer the question of the person who emailed. Her parents bought a house 29 years ago. Most mortgages are 30 years. And they live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And she reached out to me because she knows all I do is, home ownership, real estate law, and said, how do my parents get a deed in their name once the mortgage gets paid off later in 2024? And I said, they already have the deed in their name. You don't need to do anything. So let me break that down. If you bought your home through what I'm going to call the traditional way means you went and got a mortgage from a bank or a credit union. Anytime in the last 60, 70 years, basically since World War II to now, you probably bought your home going through this process I'm going to describe right now. The prior owner of the home signed a deed over to you. That piece of paper is your record that you own the property. You can go get that deed online or from your county's deed records office. So in Harris County, the deeds are available online. They're free. You'll get an unofficial copy, but you can just go search your name on the Harris County Clerk's deed records, or you can go down to their office at 201 Caroline Street, Houston, Texas, 77002. I go there a lot. The second part of granting someone a mortgage, using a mortgage to buy the property. Most of my clients think, well, I don't own the property, the bank does. Tell me if you've heard that one before. That's not true. Texas is what's called a lien state, meaning I buy the property from the owner, I now have 100% of the ownership in my name. And then I willingly gave the bank a lien, so part of the ownership of this property, in return for them giving me money that I needed to pay for the property. It's like three people to a triangle: you and the buyer, or you, the buyer, you, the bank. And I know the triangle moves around, but I hope that makes sense. So when you pay off the mortgage, now you own the hot property free and clear. You're not going to get a new deed. You're going to generally get what's referred to as a release of lien. And the bank might mail this to you with instructions to say, go file a copy of this in the deed records. Or what's more common is the bank will file a copy of it in the deed records and then send you a copy saying, we filed this in the deed records. What that then does is you look at the deed that you got way back when, 30 years ago, and you look at the release of lien, you read those two documents together, and it says you own the house free and clear of any mortgages. You don't need to go do anything else. You don't need to get a lawyer involved. You can go, pull your deed off of the county's deed records in whatever county you live in. Like the process I just described is not Harris County, City of Houston specific. The legal information that April and I have shared and are sharing is applicable all across the state of Texas. So I hope that helps. I know this person emailed, so they can't say yes or no, but I hope this does answer his or her question.
Yeah. So similar to like a car, when you get the title in the mail, and now the lien holder's name is removed from it or whatever, or the dealership or whomever's name is taken off, it's similar to the same kind of process. At what point should you start investigating the efforts into focusing on a solution for, and I'm kind of paraphrasing the question because it's quite lengthy, for foreclosure prevention when it comes to taxes? When do you start? Like, do you wait until you start getting foreclosure notices? Do you wait until you know you can't pay the bill? Or like, when do you start?
So I encourage every single person watching this to start as soon as possible, because it's only going to get more expensive the longer it takes. And let me explain what this process looks like and then the expense at each level. I can't give you exact numbers, but I can kind of give you percentages to show you how the bill goes up really quickly. So you fall behind on taxes. Let's say it's 2024's taxes. The tax bill is not going to be sent to you until October, November 2024, so later this year. You got until January 31st of 2025 to pay the taxes. If you don't pay them on time, February 1, they're considered delinquent. Automatic 6% penalty is attached. So if your taxes were $1,000, add 6% to that. I'm a lawyer, not a mathematician, but I'm pretty sure that means you automatically owe another $60, right? You didn't do anything. If the number is higher, by all means, please tell me. But $60, and then it increases. Interest is charged an additional 1% each month until the county caps at 18%. And the only reason they cap at 18% is because Texas law caps interest at 18%. 18% on thousands of dollars can escalate very, very quickly. Now that's delinquent taxes. Every county has a different process, but more often than not, they're going to refer your delinquent tax account to one of their collection attorneys. And once that happens, the collection attorney is going to be able to charge another 15%, 1.5 on top of that in attorney's fees. So we've already talked about 6% going all the way up to 18%, going on and on and on. Maybe you've heard the phrase, the most powerful force in the universe is compound interest. 6%, 7%, and so on can increase that number tremendously. And then you add on top the one-time 15% attorney fees once a law firm gets involved. And you can see how this $1,000 bill in my example just can easily double, triple very, very quickly within a couple of years. So if you fall behind on your taxes, as soon as you become delinquent, you're entitled to request a payment plan. But that just because you're entitled to it doesn't mean you have to wait. You can contact the county. In fact, in Harris County, they make it so easy. If you go to the Harris County Tax Assessor's website, you can just request a payment plan online, right? It's 2024, y'all. Our elected officials are trying to make these resources as accessible as possible. And you can request that payment plan online. You will have to pay some penalties. You will have to pay some interest, but you'll have stopped the bleeding and you'll have given yourself certainty. And that's the goal. By being proactive, you're taking control rather than reacting. So hopefully that was responsive to the question.
Okay. And let me double check. Those were all the questions that I had that were emailed. Let me make sure I don't have any other. And I don't see any questions on Facebook either or on YouTube. So I do
Can I-
believe that was it.
Can I share my screen real quick? I want to show y'all how easy it is to ask for a payment plan.
Absolutely.
All right, give me 1 sec. All right, are y'all able to see my screen? Is it coming through?
Yes.
So I just went to Google, typed in Harris County Tax Office. I'll do it again. Harris County Tax Office. First link, Harris County Tax Office. Click on it. I'm looking for property taxes. So I go to property taxes. Let me zoom in to make this a little more legible for those watching on small devices. Go to property taxes with a little bit of a drop down. Search and payments, so you can figure out, how much you're behind and how much you need to pay. Payment installment plan. You click on that. Scroll on down. This has information about how to ask. It says we offer payment plans ranging from 12 months, so 1 year, up to 36 months, so 3 years. How does this work? It tells you how the process works. They tell you how much they're going to charge. And then you put in your account number and you can ask for a payment plan. It's that easy. So if you're falling behind on property taxes, just check it out. Not every county has this easy, but every county has to follow this process. So if you live in Fort Bend County, Brazoria County, Hunt County, Lamar County, Nacogdoches County, Gregg County, whatever, fill in the county, anywhere in 254 counties in Texas, they got to follow the law, which is if it's your homestead and you're behind on taxes, you can get a 1 to 3 year payment plan. How they follow through might not be as easy as Harris County has made it by putting it online, but you contact the county the county tax office and ask for that payment plan, or the school district's tax office and ask for that payment plan. And you are entitled, you're entitled to it.
Mhm. Bottom line, ask. You don't ask, you don't receive it. You don't get it. Nobody knows. So please do not let your pride get in the way of you losing your house or you losing your home or whatever generational wealth that you have accumulated thus far because of something that can be resolved. Miss Charlotte, you unmuted yourself. You have a question?
Yes, I have a question. Does that include, like, when you make a payment plan, does that include the lawyer if it's gone to that point, or that's something totally separate?
No, if a law firm has got involved, and the way you'll know if a law firm has got involved is they'll mail you a letter saying, hey, we represent the county now, or the city, or what have you, or they filed a lawsuit. Then that 15% is added to your tax bill. So when you set up the payment plan, it will go to pay back everything. It's not like you have to have a separate payment plan with the law firm and the county or the school district and whoever else you might owe taxes to.
Okay, thank you.
To piggyback on that question really quick, Amir. So if it gets to a point where it hasn't capped at the 18% and you make a payment arrangement when you've gotten up to 12%, say 12%, and you're now making payments, is that interest still accruing until it gets up to that 18% level, or does it stop when you make the payment arrangement?
So candidly, I don't know. I've never looked into whether you cap the interest increases. What I do know is you have stopped them. The 1% that increases every month is a penalty. So it's not interest. And so I've never sat down with one of my clients and done the math after we've got a payment plan set up. We just make sure that their payment does not increase, right? If I ask for $300 a month and the city and the county agree to it, we're going to set that up so that no one's surprised, right? That's the reason why you're doing that. I know a portion of that $300 a month example payment is going towards interest. and it's designed over 3 years to pay it off. So I would assume that once you ask for the payment plan, it stops the increase in interest. But candidly, I don't know. I've just never
Okay.
had the client where I needed to research that question.
Okay, that'll be a question I hope to remember to ask at our next property tax presentation. So that'll be in August. So I'll do my best to ask that, to remember. I don't think there were any other questions in the chat. Rachel, did you see anything else in there that were
So
and you
Ms.
did
Johnson raised her hand again.
oh Ms. Johnson, go right ahead.
And Foreman.
Go right
Oh,
ahead, Ms.
that was
Charlotte.
that was from when I asked you. You answered my question.
Okay. All right, I'll lower that. Ms. Foreman?
Yes, I wanted to go back to the gentrification discussion, and my question is regarding the developers when they come in and they start uh, taking over this property for back taxes, and they are offering pennies to the heirs that are left. The question is, do they include paying off the back taxes that are owed in that agreement to whatever they're asking to buy that land or property from the heirs? Or would that be something separate?
So it's a tough question to answer because estate developers, real estate investors will be very creative, and that's I can put it. Very creative about how they try to get a hold of property, especially when there's property taxes involved. So I'm going to try to answer it a few different ways with some assumptions. The first off is when someone buys a piece of dirt or a portion of a piece of land from like an heir, they want to get certainty, not a headache. And what do I mean by that? I am going to buy the property from this heir. I'm going to pay, let's just say there's 4 heirs. I'm going to pay one. I'm going to pay you 25% of the value of the property. And that's a negotiation, right? Like I can just say the house is worth 400,000, give me 100 grand. And the real estate developer say, I'll give you 50. And if I agree to it, fine. But as the developer, I'm also not wanting those taxes to increase. So I'm probably going to pay the taxes. Maybe I say, I'm going to give you 50 and then I'll pay $25,000 of the taxes on your behalf, right? I'm making some assumptions here. Some developers might not be as sophisticated and buy out an heir's share of the property, but not pay off the taxes. Well, then what you have now is you're co-owner and you got a headache that's increasing the tax bill. So it really depends on the situation. What I can tell you is the state of Texas passed the Uniform Heirs Partition Act, UHPA, which is a law that 23 other states and territories have that's designed to prevent a developer from coming in and buying a sliver of the property. So one heir, it might be 10 heirs, it might be 100, it might be 4, and then forcing the other heirs to lose their share of the property without any sort of process that can seem like you're being railroaded, for lack of a better way of putting it. It doesn't mean the heirs can just ignore this developer, but there's more of a bring everything into the light, bring things into negotiation, give heirs more of a equal say, a level playing field. I'm sorry to keep mixing metaphors, but short answer to your question is it really is very fact dependent. If I was a real estate investor, I would not want to buy any property, even if a share of it, without making sure the taxes are paid. And it's all public record. I just showed you how easy it is to ask for a tax payment plan, but you can check tax bills online too, because this is maintained by the government. It's public record because we have open record laws. So I hope that answers your question. If it didn't, I'm happy to, y'all got us for 14 more minutes. And I'm happy to answer any follow-ups.
Well, thank you. And yes, it did. There's a slew of property in this particular area that has been bought up by the same developer. And of course, they're going in and building these brick homes, they just really look out of place. And of course, what's going to happen is that, you know, the taxes are going to go up, and these are older, elderly people that are remaining in the community. And if they don't have those certain exemptions, they're not going to be able to, they're not going to be able to pay the taxes on there. And so I was just wondering how that was going, because you know, you got Bubba and you got Keisha that's being left over, and they're the ones that's being approached about, you know, the other property, and they're getting paid pennies. And I'm just was wondering, you know, what's happening to all the back taxes that were, you know, that were owed on the property. But my main concern is the ones that are remaining, that, you know, the taxes are going to be so high that they're going to have to move out. They're gonna have to
Now,
give that up. But
keep in mind also, Ms. Foreman, that paying back taxes is not the same as buying it at a foreclosure auction, because the taxes haven't been paid. If they go in and they just pay the taxes, they just paid the taxes and gifted that to you. The tax assessor collector's office, they don't care who paid the taxes. I can go in and pay the taxes on the property, and that doesn't make it mine. I just gifted you a payment of your property taxes that were owed.
okay.
So it's not the same thing.
And I just want to chime in. If they buy it, they still owe the debt. So like if they bought it at foreclosure, well, the debt is still the debtor. It's still who owed that debt. So they still need to be paid. That doesn't necessarily eliminate the debt.
Yeah, they just bought it when they bought it at the auction, because the taxes go with the land. So if they get it at the auction, you guys aren't now liable still for the bill, and then they get to keep the land. That's not how that works.
Okay.
Miss
Okay. So
Foreman,
now,
I'm
sure.
sorry to interrupt. If you wouldn't mind, I put my email address in the chat. There's one thing we try to do for communities like the one you just described, is do a lot of education. And so if you can share this video when the recording is done, but if folks are more comfortable talking to somebody in person, me, April, the three other people that I manage, we can come out and speak to folks, either at a church, community center, parking lot in the shade in November when it's not hot.
Just
You know?
give us some water. Just give
Yeah,
us some water.
Thank you.
Community outreach is a huge part of what Lone Star Legal Aid does, because you know, we try to help as many people as possible, but knowledge is power. And so sometimes the folks we can't individually help, we can educate, and then they're empowered and have the dignity to make their own decisions.
Take advantage of that. If anybody's listening, take advantage of that opportunity to get that information. Okay. Those are all the questions that I had. I don't see anything else that just popped up or anything. So there are no other questions that are in the chat. So with that being said, Amir and April, thank y'all very, very much. Oh, I have a question. Okay, go right ahead. You want to unmute yourself? As ARZ? I can't tell if they're typing or if the foreclosure is because can you unmute yourself? If the foreclosure is because the mortgage is not paid, is there a solution?
So I'm happy to answer that question. I will let you know it's outside what we talked about today, but what my team and I do is every 3 months we talk about a mortgage foreclosure. So we're going to discuss that either in August or September, homeowners association foreclosure, and then property tax foreclosure. And then we repeat this presentation several times a year, just to make sure that folks who weren't able to tune in live, or if there's been any changes to the law, we can update it. So For more details on mortgage foreclosure, stay tuned. I don't have the schedule in front of me, but it'll either be the fourth Thursday in August or the fourth Thursday in September. Now,
because
go
it
ahead.
was last month, Amir, I will go ahead and send out the link for that presentation from last month where you talked about the mortgage foreclosures. So
We talked about it in May.
Yep, you talked about it in May, so I can definitely send it out.
Appreciate
But go
it.
ahead
But
and answer the question.
if your home was foreclosed on because your mortgage wasn't paid, more than likely there's nothing that can be done. So there are several types of mortgages in Texas. There's a traditional mortgage, which most people think about. It's like 90% of the market. I use this mortgage to buy my house. Or a home equity loan. Some people know it as a second mortgage. We're talking about the exact same thing. Or a reverse mortgage. Those three things are loans where you got money in return for giving your house as collateral. If you've been foreclosed on by any one of those, if the lender followed the legal process, more than likely you can't do anything to get your house back. Are there exceptions, and are there lenders that don't follow the law? Absolutely. Mortgage companies, lenders, they're made of people, and people make mistakes all the time. People can take different readings of the law and deadlines and what have you. I wish I could be more specific in response to your question, but the general nature of our legal information here being that I have to stay kind of high level. If you give me more facts, I can share more information with you. But if your house was foreclosed on because the mortgage was not paid, whether it was any one of those three types of loan, there's generally not much you can do.
Let me ask this question really quick, and I know we're starting to run out of time. When it comes to foreclosures, and whether it's the mortgage or the property taxes, but specifically for the property taxes, and it's sold at the auction, if the house is sold for more than, does the county allow you to purchase the property for more than what the taxes were owed on it, or do they cap it at what the property tax bill was?
That's a great question. So in a situation where someone owes taxes and the property does go to a foreclosure auction, the city, the school district, the county, whoever's scheduled it will start the bidding at the total tax debt, and then they don't have an incentive for it to go higher. But what you'll generally find is real estate investors or folks looking to buy the property will bid it higher. And generally you can see, you could see a $300,000 house and the tax bill is $5,000. Well, the bidding is not going to stay at 5,001. It can go up to $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. And so then what does that excess money above the taxes represent? It represents the equity that the previous homeowner had built up in his or her home. And so that money will go back to the court records that authorize the tax foreclosure. And then the homeowner or his or her heirs will be entitled to ask for it. There's a process you have to go through. It's called petitioning for excess proceeds. But that is literally when I talk about equity, I'm not talking about doing the right thing. I'm talking about recognizing a property right. Like, this was mine. I owned it. You took it away from me and sold it. You got more than what I owed you. So that's my money. And those are excess proceeds. So only the homeowner or his or her heirs would be entitled to.
Okay. I wanted to make sure people got that information right, and that I didn't say it, that you said it correctly. So I wanted to make sure that got out there. So how does one find out what their house got sold for at an auction?
So that is also pretty much, not pretty much, it is public record. What happens is when there's a foreclosure auction, several steps happen. First off, a judge will issue an order saying this is how much the taxes are and all the fees and what have you. So there's a judgment that says you can now foreclose for this number. And then that judgment is given to a sheriff or a constable who is in charge of running the actual foreclosure auction. And then once the sheriff or constable finishes the auction so that you got all the bids, you know how much it was sold for, the sheriff or auction will sign a deed saying, I signed this property, Amir Bafroui's property, over to Nia Murray at the June 4th foreclosure auctions, and the highest bid was $50,000. They'll put the number there. So to answer your question, the place you can find it is in the sheriff's foreclosure sale deed. That's one place. A second place is most sheriff's offices will execute a document. It can vary in names, but it's generally called like a sheriff's proof of execution sale. And they'll file a copy of that in the court record saying, Your Honor, you gave me a judgment. It told me to sell this property. It told me to sell it for this much money. I scheduled it. I sold it. I swear on a penalty of perjury. This is how much it was sold for. So there's two places, both public records, that you can get that information. One, the sheriff's foreclosure sale deed, often referred to as a sheriff or constable's deed. And two, you can go check the court records for like a sheriff's return of execution or affidavit of execution. The name varies, but substantively it just says, I, the sheriff, followed your orders, Judge, and this is how much I sold it for.
Miss Charlotte, you got another question?
Yes, one question. Is it possible to find out if it's a lien or something on your property on the computer?
It is. So you could go to the same place. Every county has their deed records online. And if there is a valid lien, so a legally enforceable lien, it has to be recorded in the deed records. And so you can find this information online. What is sometimes difficult to find is there's no requirement for the lender or the lien holder to indicate how much money is tied to that lien in the deed records. So this is common with like mortgage liens. Often you sign a deed of trust and they'll put the amount of money that you borrowed at the beginning of the mortgage. And so now there's a deed of trust, which is the contract that creates a lien, the legal authority to foreclose. They'll file a copy of it in the deed records. 15, 20 years goes by, you still haven't paid it off. They're not updating the number. They're not required to update the number in the deed records, but you can then still go in the deed records and find that document providing proof that there, yes, in fact, is a lien until you find something that indicates the lien was released, like I mentioned earlier.
And what is the website again?
So, any county you live in, so Harris County, Fort Bend County, clerk deed records. That's what I would search for, on whatever your browser of choice, Google, Yahoo, what have you.
Okay.
Whatever county where the property is located, it's in their Register of Deeds office.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. I think that's it. ARZ65, I hope that answered your question that you had too about the foreclosure. I will definitely make sure that I include the recording from last month's presentation so that you can go back and take a look at that as well. It'll have a whole lot more detail about the mortgage foreclosure process and things like that. So let's see, our next one that we've got coming up is not until August. We don't have a foreclosure presentation for July, but that one I do believe will be the HOA foreclosure presentation. And then we'll start over again with, as Mir had described, with the rotation of doing the mortgage foreclosures again in September. So if there's something that you guys wanted to discuss that you didn't get the opportunity to say here or ask questions here, we will be back in the next few months with this same presentation. We do these on a monthly basis, so we do encourage you guys to come back and ask whatever questions it is that you may have had from before, information that you want to share, just want to update, because laws change, processes change. So we want to make sure that we give you guys the most up-to-date, the most current information that's available to you, because Rachel and myself don't keep up with real estate laws like that. So, or foreclosure laws. So we want to make sure that those experts, we want to make sure that the experts in those fields are providing you guys with the most up-to-date information is so that you also don't keep listening to the street committee and having people tell you what happened and how I did this and what happened when, and 5 years ago was not the same as today, prior to COVID, so many things have changed. So get the most accurate information as you possibly can, which is why we put on these presentations. So we want to thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Again, April and Amir and Lone Star Legal Aid and the entire A Month of Service Partnership. Thank you guys on behalf of all of us for joining us this afternoon. We hope that you did find the information to be beneficial. Hope that you do join us again soon for another presentations. We will be starting over again in August. Again, We don't have any workshops that are scheduled for the month of July, but we will be sending out the notices and kind of reminders and links of in case you missed it from some of the previous ones, so that you can continue to watch throughout the month of July. So with that being said, y'all have a good one. Take care of yourselves, stay safe, stay warm. It's hurricane season. Get prepared. Do whatever it is that you got to do to take care of yourselves. You all stay safe, and we will see you all again soon.
Bye-bye. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks.
Before you go right quick,
Yes,
Ms.
ma'am.
Harmon, can you answer the question? I just went on the deeds thing. Do
Yes,
I
ma'am.
type in under grantee, grantor, trustee? Do you know which one?
Grantee is where you're gonna put whoever like if it's you, if you're the owner, that'll be your name.
Okay, and then I have to put the subdivision?
You can. It helps with the search.
Because when I
Yeah.
went in there, I couldn't find it. That was why I asked.
I always
On
start as broad as, we usually start broad in the legal world because then we can capture whatever. So you can start with the name and then you'll have to kind of do some scrolling, but then you can look. That's what we normally do. We'll start with the name and then look at the subdivision information, if that makes sense.
Okay. All right.
and if you need help with like the legal description, because I know a lot of times those subdivisions have like a lot of abbreviations and things like that, go to the if you're in Harris County, to the appraisal district's website where you got your account number. That little legal description, that first part of that is usually the same as the description of the subdivision that you would put in that blank. So
Okay.
if it says subdivision and it just says sub or something like that, then you'll know what the abbreviated word is or what the abbreviated phrase is that you need to search for in that way.
Okay. So don't worry about where it says file number, file code.
No,
and
you won't, because you won't know any of
all of them.
that part. But your
Okay.
name and at least that subdivision where it says the lot and block number and all of that, you could put that information in there if you have it. That'll help with narrowing the search. But like Miss April said, start broad. We know with just your name first. And if that doesn't pop up, or you're going to get all these lists of everything, especially if somebody has a common name as yours, then you're going to need to type in that description or subdivision and things like that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Because I was trying to see, because it has no where you could just put an address and it clicks up. So
No, it
No.
doesn't. No,
okay.
no. Okay.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Y'all have a good one.
You
Thank
too.
you, Miss
Bye.
April.
Thank you. Bye-bye.